Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers.
Hey, Brewer fans, welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast. This is Craig. With me is Vince and Scott.
Hey, guys. Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Hey, Craig, do we have Chad on the phone?
No, I don't think so, but I'm sure he'll chime in real soon. It's only been about a year or so since we've heard from him last, but we'll see. He could chime in any minute here, so stay tuned, folks. But on today's podcast, we're going to be going over the 2019 Brewers Brew Crew Review awards for lots of different categories, so stay tuned for that. The Brewers did wrap up a pretty successful 2019 season, as you know, and we made it to the playoffs for the second consecutive year. Only the second time in franchise history that we've gone to the playoffs in consecutive years in our 50-year history. So that was a pretty big achievement. However, we did get bounced after the wild card game, but we'd also like to congratulate both teams that made the World Series. The Nationals, who barely got by the Brewers, did make it all the way to the World Series to represent the NL. And of course, the AL representatives are the Houston Astros, and it should be a pretty good World Series coming up. And I know some of the games will be out there in Vince's neck of the woods in D.C., so I hope I'll give us some live reporting on the next podcast.
Yeah, I will. I'll be going to at least a game or two of the World Series, so definitely.
Oh, by the way, as long as we're talking about this, let's do this. We have our two Twitter polls. Who do you want to win the World Series, and who do you think will win? So why don't you guys – here, Craig, I'll start with you, and then Vince, and then me, and then I'll tell you what Twitter thinks.
Vince can go first, if that's what you said.
All right. I want and I think that the Astros will win.
I think the Astros will win, but I guess I will be rooting for the Nationals just because it's their first time there, and they were formerly the Montreal Expos, and I think they got shafted in 1994, so they're a different franchise, a different city and everything, so to speak. It'd be nice to see a team that's never won the World Series before win one.
And
like
different fans, and different fans, and most of the guys on the team were not born yet that year.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the Nationals fan base, I guess, but I will say that I think that the Astros will win, but I actually also want the Nationals to win because I don't know. I guess it'll make the Brewers more special because there will be only like a couple of teams left that haven't won a World Series, so we'll be one of them. So that'll be great, right?
Misery loves company, though, Scott. You should know this.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, well. Maybe the Astros will win. So, actually, since we're on this topic, before we get off of it, it's both of the teams are built around their ace starting pitchers. Unlike kind of the Brewers, who are, based off their bullpen mostly. But what's your guys' vote on which top three starting pitchers are better, or would you rather take Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin, or Cole, Verlander, and Greinke? Scott.
It's a very tough call because I think that Cole is the best one of all of them, but I think that the Nationals have the better collective group there. Especially if you're looking at building a dynasty, because Verlander and Greinke are so damn old. But yeah, well, actually, so is forget it. Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Scherzer's old too. Yeah.
Yeah, Scherzer. I was like, he's old, but not like as old as them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that this year it's still the Astros, and years to come it'll be the Nationals. But I still think that this year the Astros rotation is the best in baseball, especially after they added Greinke at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I will go with the Nationals, even though it's very close. I think Scherzer is the best of the group, even though Cole seems to be the hottest right now. We'll see, because there are a lot of these guys going to go head-to-head. It should be a pretty exciting World Series, actually. I really like the matchup. So.
Well, guys, I'm going to rattle off this, like all of these fun categories, and we're going to talk briefly about one of them and who we're gonna pick for each category. But I did want to segue into that by pointing out that, like, when you look at like runs scored versus runs against, like pretty much every playoff team is always in the positive, and certainly by a lot, almost always. And this year, looking at it, the Brewers finished +3 in run differential. The Cardinals actually finished +102, and the Cubs +97. So, it was definitely a great job being able to win, despite the fact that we basically scored as many runs as we gave up the entire year. To finish with the record that we did, and to get 89 wins is absolutely phenomenal. And I think with that in mind, I think it's very possible that obviously Craig Counsell is the best man. Well, he's the best manager the Brewers have seen in a while, but I think he might actually get manager of the year this year.
I would like to point out that if he took Corbin Burns out of that equation, we probably would have been about +100 runs. So when the Brewers lose, they like to do it in style in the 2019. That's all. But all right, Scott, let's fire off these categories.
All right. Well, let's just start with our most obvious. We'll just talk about who do you think is the MVP of this team? Just of this team.
What do you mean of this? You mean this 2019 team?
Yeah, because I think everyone's going to say Christian Yelich, and I think that it's.
Well, Scott, you just stole our thunder.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, just for this Brewers team, like, he might be the MVP of the whole league again, but not sure what's going to happen with that. But yeah, he gets my vote for the team. Obviously, this is a pretty easy category. I thought we could breeze through this one.
Well, yeah, it's Christian.
I'll have to agree with that. I mean, the one stat I'll point out, well, I'll point out a couple, but his 1,100 OPS, I believe, I know for sure it is the greatest and highest OPS in Milwaukee Brewers history. I will go as far as saying I don't think it'll ever be topped by another Brewer season. So I believe that Christian Yelich's 2019 Brewer season offensively was the best statistical season in Brewer history. He was a 30-30 player with 44 homers and 30 steals, and he led the league in hitting for the second time in a row. And prior to the last two seasons, it had never been done by Brewer in the other 48 seasons prior to Christian Yelich's arrival. So, yeah, I'll just stick with that.
Yeah, it's definitely Christian Yelich. No debate here.
Perfect. Yeah, I thought that one was quick and easy, but yeah, I'm glad you rattled off some of those stats because obviously, like just an absolutely phenomenal year, especially a year that was cut short. I mean, who knows what could have been? It could have literally been one of the best baseball seasons of all time. So, with that in mind, best starter. Who do we think?
I'll say Brandon Woodruff.
I will agree with that pick. He was our all-star starter, and he did start the wild card game and left us in a position to win, and he looked pretty good in that game too. I think that he's going to be our number one starter going forward. Firmly believe that.
Yeah, I think it actually, when you look at the numbers, like it's kind of close between like him and Zach Davies, but even I guess an honorable mention to Gio Gonzalez as well. But yeah, I have to agree. Like Woodruff is obviously the guy that I want, to have the ball in like, say, if there was like a one-game winner-take-all type game that the Brewers were in, like I would want him to be the starter, and I'm sure he'd do phenomenal.
Like the wild card game, yeah.
Yeah,
he did do well.
Exactly. All right, Let's move on to best reliever.
Scott, you can lead off this one.
All right. Well, despite giving up a ridiculous amount of home runs, I think it still absolutely has to be Josh Hader because, when you look at the body of work, like he still had a phenomenal year. Obviously, it ended not quite the way that we wanted it to, but that happens to most teams, unfortunately. That's just the way the playoffs work. So, I'm still giving him the nod.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the great man. I think that Josh Hader is definitely your guy. He was an all-star again this season. Didn't end the season well, obviously, with the game out here in Washington. But, overall, the Brewers were going to be nowhere close to where they ended the season if it wasn't for Josh Hader's contributions from the bullpen. So, yeah, Josh Hader.
Well, it's our third category and I think our third consensus pick. Josh Hader, he had a 16.4 strikeouts per 9 innings. That's ridiculous. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal year for him. Honorable mentions to Drew Pomeranz and Brent Suter. Neither one of them really threw enough innings, but they both did a great job with the amount of innings that they had. But moving on to our very next category. You know what? Let's just get this one out of the way because I feel like all of those were pretty easy, but I don't want to end with this one, so let's get it out of the way. Who is your most disappointing Brewer of this year?
Who are you asking first, Scott?
I'll go last on this.
All right. Vince, you can lead off every time from here on out, and then I'll just –
All right. Okay. I'll say Travis Shaw. The guy was definitely pegged to be a big contributor for the Brewers going into the season. He had hit 30-plus home runs the last 2 years. Obviously, had signed Mike Moustakas, but he was still expected to be a big part of this offense. And he really had a bad season. And there's no other way to sugarcoat it. He was awful. Spent a good chunk of the year in AAA. Definitely Travis Shaw.
Yeah, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Corbin Burns only because I had such high hopes for him coming into this year. Obviously, if he could turn back time, he would find a way and whatever else Cher would tell him to do. But it was just absolutely just a year that he would like to forget. Honorable mention. Well, I'll do that later. Craig, you could do yours.
Oh, well, here's the thing about this. I was wondering who you guys would pick. I thought maybe you'd pick Travis Shaw both. I guess I was right. But I thought maybe there was another Brewer with a worse season, so I tried to look up. And believe it or not, I found quite a few nominees.
Yeah.
My official pick will probably be Shaw because we just mentioned Christian Yelich had the best offensive season in Brewer history. Travis Shaw just had one of the worst offensive seasons in Major League Baseball history, I would say. So that probably give him the nod. But beyond that, the list of guys that were nominees in my mind was kind of staggering when I looked at it. Scott, you mentioned one of them in Corbin Burns, high expectations, and he was just terrific. Freddie Peralta wasn't quite as bad, but he could not hold down a rotation spot and had a pretty disappointing overall ERA in the upper fives. So that's definitely another candidate. Sticking on the pitching side, we also had our Game 7 NLCS starter last year, Julio Chacin. He got cut from the team. He was so bad before the season ended. So there's that. He's definitely a nominee too. Going over to the offensive side, obviously, besides Shaw, we had Jesus Aguilar, who also was just terrible after having a phenomenal season last year, and he got traded. That's quite a few guys. And I think this all goes, you have that many guys that were that disappointing. And another guy that I'll throw in there, offensive side-wise, was Lorenzo Cain as our leadoff hitter. I think had an OPS of less than 700. So, unfortunately, as great as defense is, I think that would have to qualify as a pretty disappointing season from him. So that's quite a few number of guys. And the fact that we still made the playoffs in spite of all those guys having a number of innings for us, I think that really goes to show how great of a manager Craig Counsell is. And I guess I'll end my diatribe with that. But my official vote was for Travis Shaw.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Nelson, obviously, when he came back from injury, he could be nominated on there as well. But I kind of give him a pass because he did come back from injury. Hernan Perez, I think, is another guy that we could throw in there. Just not great. And when you look at it, I was thinking about it. I'm like, let's say you couldn't use Josh Hader at the beginning of this year and you had to get through like the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th innings. Who would you pick at opening day? And I would say I would probably go with Taylor Williams, Corbin Burns, and Jeremy Jeffress. I think I could get 4 great innings out of them. And that's still a solid, really solid bullpen. And unfortunately, was not the case this year.
You just mentioned another one of my nominees. I forgot to mention that was Jeremy Jeffress, who was our lockdown 8th inning reliever last year and wrote himself off the team with his bad play this year also. So that's another nominee.
All right. Well, let's see. What else do we got here? Rookie of the year, to be honest, I don't even know who qualifies for this. I can only think of one name, and I think it's obviously going to be the name that we're all thinking of.
Let's see. Not David Freitas, but no, Keston Hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Keston just had a phenomenal year. I mean, I really didn't have this kind of an expectation. We haven't had a Brewer that jumped on the scene like this coming up from our farm system since Ryan Braun, in my opinion. I mean, just a great year.
No, I agree. And he's obviously going to be the guy, I think, for the team's Rookie of the Year because he had such a great season. I will just say, in other years, we could have talked about Trent Grisham. I think that he really played a big role for the team going down the stretch and was a really valuable guy this season, despite what happened in the wild card game. But Keston Hero just had such a good year; it's got to be him.
Agreed. Keston Hero in his short time, 19 home runs, hitting over 300, OPS of about 850, and we had obviously Grisham is another surprising candidate also. And if I remember this discussion last year, we had very few rookies that really contributed last year at all. So I think those are definitely key guys to our future. We'll see.
Yeah, Keston. I mean, he hit over 319 home runs in just 314 at bats. And it's not quite an 1100 OPS, but 938, absolutely ridiculous. Overall a great year for him. And I do want to point out that Grisham did not make an error the entire regular season while he was up. So he waited, unfortunately, until the least opportune time for that. But, it happens. Moving on, I guess. Breakout player. I mean, that kind of seems like a little bit redundant. I don't know. I mean, I guess
who came up with these? Who came up with these questions, Scott?
Well, I mean, that was me, but I'm sorry. It was our intern, and then I picked some, and then the intern kind of added some to kind of move this out a little bit. But
there's always other interns you can get, Scott. Just keep that in mind in case you want to move on from.
Well, actually, our last intern, her name was Jolise, so she also did not make it through the entire season. Oh well.
All right, I'm gonna answer your question a little bit differently and not say Keston. I'm gonna actually say Brandon Woodruff was your breakout player because, if you guys remember going into the year, we had 3 very young pitchers that were gonna be given a shot in the starting rotation between Burns, Peralta, and Woodruff is the only guy that survived the season in the starting rotation. I would just say that he took a huge step up in 2019 as a starter. We knew he was somewhat successful as a reliever coming out of the bullpen in August and September of 2018, but to do what he did in the starting rotation and to really anchor that rotation down, I think, for most of the year, besides when he was injured, I think was really big for this team, and I don't think we'd make the playoffs without him. So I'm going to say Brandon Woodruff is my breakout player.
That's a good pick, Vince. I'm going to go with that word breakout, kind of is like someone that came out of somewhat nowhere and just and I think with that being said, my pick will be Trent Grisham just because I know he was a former first-round draft pick, but he really showed nothing in any of the prior years in the minor leagues that would have led to believe he would have had the season he had in the minor leagues, and then also even was contributing for the Brewers this year. Prior to this, in fact, I think MLB.com had him ranked like 28th top 30 Brewer prospects coming into the season. So his prospect value had completely tanked, and I think, there were some mechanical changes they made in his swing, and he obviously has a real good command of the strike, judgment of the strike zone. I think those two things combined really made him break out in the true sense of the word. So I'll go with him.
I guess I could go with maybe Adrian Hauser. That might be an interesting candidate. I mean,
that's a good pick too. Absolutely.
He had a 3.72 ERA, and he threw 111 innings and struck out 117 with only 37 walks. Not bad. Like, the whip is a little up there with 1.24, but and then honorable mention to Zach Davies. I think the first half of the year was absolutely phenomenal for him.
Yep.
I think maybe he threw a few too many innings this year after coming back from an injury last year. I think it kind of caught up with him a little bit. He sort of tuckered out a little bit toward the end of the year, but overall a great season as well. But
I think honorable mention goes to Jordan Lyles actually as well. I mean, the guy was outstanding for us the second half. He was 7-1 as a Brewer down the stretch.
Well, he might come up too in the next couple of categories as well. Who was our best off-season acquisition?
Well, he wasn't an off-season acquisition, Scott.
No, I know, but it's coming up.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't know the categories. I mean, we don't.
No
one listens. No one listens to the pre-production meeting. The best off-season acquisition was definitely Monty Grandal. He really anchored the team's offense, and defensively as a catcher. I think he had a great season. He took a ton of walks. He was on base all the time. Hit for power. So yeah, definitely Monty Grandal for me.
I'll also pick Yasmani. The walks were pretty big. I know he only hit like 246, but adding 109 walks or whatever he had is ridiculous for a catcher. And but I think the true sense where he was the best acquisition is how he was able to handle our pitching staff as a catcher. So I'll give it to him.
Yeah,
Yasmani's OBP this year was 380.
Yeah,
that's solid.
Which is
great work.
Yeah, pretty outstanding.
Not a lot of catchers. I mean, if you want to look back in Brewer history, Brewer catchers that can hack it at the top of the order, I think about Jason Kendall and not much else, maybe BJ Surhoff. But, that's absolutely great job by Grandal. And also, I mean, as long as we're talking about how great he was, obviously after the playoffs last year, the big knock on him was, his defense or being able to call a game. And, like, all of that was put to bed this year. Like, I thought he did a phenomenal job behind the plate as well. And then super honorable mention to Mike Moustakas. I mean, 35 bombs this year. Just two great offseason acquisitions, both all-stars. But good job, Moustakas. But, yeah, Grandal gets it.
It's kind of funny, though, because I don't know if I count Moustakas as an off-season acquisition since we already had him, But I guess you're right. I mean, we did have to re-sign him, obviously. But technically, since he was already a Brewer, maybe I don't view him as much of an off-season acquisition as the guy that we got last season, 2018.
Yeah. Well,
both those guys were very late off-season acquisitions too, which really means other teams could have swooped in and gotten their services, and the Brewers kind of were laying in the weeds and jumped in there. So got to give Stearns credit for that, especially being able to sign someone like Yasmani for a one-year contract. That's unheard of. So, I mean, their strategy paid off.
Yep. And then we're going to segue right into the best mid-season acquisition. See what you guys think.
That's tough. I'm going to go with Jordan Lyles just because he was so good, although really a big honorable mention to Drew Pomeranz. I mean, the guy was really able to anchor down the bullpen in many ways, and, we had struggled so much with injuries and bad performances from Jeffers and other things going into the deadline. So Pomeranz gets a lot of props from me, at least, for being a guy that can anchor that a little bit. He did make one start for the Brewers, but spent most of his time in the bullpen. So I'll go with Lyles, but it's only because he was so good. Pomeranz is a very close second for me.
Good picks. I'm going to go with Pomeranz just because I think his move to the bullpen he really took off with it. I think that's going to be a career-changing move for him, and I think that's going to be his long-term role going forward, either with the Brewers or another team that signs him.
Yeah, I think those are both absolutely phenomenal picks. I'll come out of left field and say Gio Gonzalez. I think that the team was really reeling when we kind of brought him back and getting him into the starting rotation. At the time we had so many injuries that we didn't really know who was going to start anymore. So he really came and bailed us out before things got too out of hand. So all three, great options though. All right, let's see. What do we have next? Let's do this one. Comeback Player of the Year. A couple nominees, I guess. Not many.
Good question. Comeback Player of the Year. Boy.
I guess you could say.
I'll lead off and go with. Give you guys some time to think or whatnot. I'll just go with Brent Suter. I know that he didn't play that much, but honestly, I didn't think that he'd pitch at all for the Brewers this year. So the fact that he was throwing a meaningful inning in the wild card game, if you would have told me that start of the season, I would have been like, I'll take that. But I mean, I think his ERA was ridiculous. Like, Scott, I don't know if your intern's still there, if she's already fired. But anyway, if you want to have her verify this, I believe his ERA was like 0.45 in the innings that he did pitch for the Brewers this year. So
0.49 in 18 and a third.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is a good pick. I guess I don't know. I maybe would pick Zach Davies, and I only say that not because he was injured, but because he was left off the postseason roster last year. So he came back and was obviously a pretty big part of our team in rotation. So I'll go with Zach Davies, but it's kind of an aberration.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, I think Zach Davies definitely qualifies, and I think that with a rotation of so many question marks, he really did a great job throughout the year. And the absolutely amazing start that he got out to at the beginning of the year was just phenomenal. So yeah, he's definitely a good pick. And let's see, we have one last category. There might be a little bit of debate here. Unsung hero. This one's always open to a lot of interpretation. So
well, I mean, Brent Suter, I think, was the unsung hero of the clubhouse upon his return. But my pick for that will be Jordan Lyles, just because, I mean, I joked about starting him on 4 days of rest, 3 days of rest or whatever, going through the final month. We didn't actually do that, but I mean, he was, I think, 7-1 after his acquisition with a 2.45 ERA or something. And just phenomenal. Like he was definitely in the discussion to possibly start our one and done one or done, our elimination game, wild card game. And he probably would have been the choice if Woodruff wasn't up to speed coming back from injury. So, I mean, just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that's good. I will go with Brent Suter. I think that he brings a lot to the team besides just what he does on the mound, which was actually quite a bit this season when he did get to play with, I think it was just 8 or 9 games, but he really was great coming out of the bullpen. And just the level of enthusiasm and passion he brings. I know that you can overstate that stuff at times, but honestly, that team just played better when he was around and not, rehabbing in the minors or anything. And just to have his personality and character on the team, I think was huge. So I'm going to give it to Brent Suter.
Yeah, those are definitely both pretty good picks. I can't argue with either of those. I don't know. It's hard. Like, unsung hero, like, is Eric Thames an unsung hero? I mean, the guy finished with 25 home runs. When Aguiar could not hit his way out of a paper bag at the time, despite swinging as hard as he could. Unfortunately, he wound up moving on, and I think that deal gets done because Eric things really started to heat up. Honorable mentions, I guess, to Ben Gamel's somebody that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And maybe Chase Anderson, believe it or not. I mean, for a guy that got left off the roster last year, I mean, he finished with a respectable 4.21 ERA, so he was very average, but he gave us innings when we needed him. So he was in the bullpen and started, and he was kind of all over the place. So I'll give him an honorable mention as well.
And I think he's a really good person to point out as someone in the Brewers starting pitching philosophy for the last couple of years. 2 years that we made the playoffs, by the way. Instead of having top rotation guys necessarily that you've been signing, they've been having, I'll say, depth of these number 3 type starters. And I think it's hard to really determine, but the reason that we have that depth and guys like Davies and Chase Anderson allow us to stay competitive and stay afloat to deal with injuries like to Woodruff and other people. And I think that's really paid off. And I think Chase Anderson is a great example of why it did. Is because he's not going to be a world beater by any means, but he's going to put up quality innings. And I think and he's going to be there to fill in when needed. And I think he did a great job this season. Good pick, Scott.
All right. Well, that is all the categories that I have. But I actually wanted to throw out one for bonus baseball, just for fun. Who is the prospect that we might see in 2020 that you're looking forward to? To be honest, I don't know a lot about the Brewers prospects coming up, but I know Craig does. So this one's kind of geared toward – it's kind of in his wheelhouse, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to Craig as well on that. I mean, I went to a couple minor league games this season, but yeah, Craig is definitely the expert on minor league prospects and whatnot. And really, his brother Brandon, who's our minor league expert, should be on the show tonight for that.
Well, unfortunately, we're fans are really happy with this news, but unfortunately, some of our major league ready type prospects had pretty disappointing years, mainly Corey Ray and Zach Brown. And I would think those guys would have been ready to contribute for next year, and they very well may. But there really isn't anyone that could be ready to contribute too much that really stands out. At least I'm sure there could be one or two lesser guys, or someone to come out of nowhere like Grisham, so to speak, to contribute. But really, I don't see anyone on the cusp of helping the Brewers next year, unfortunately, like the guys did this year. So, yeah, I mean, some of the guys toward the top of our prospect list are still a few years away, like Royce Trang. And the guy we drafted last year, I will point out, in the first round, Ethan Small did have a pretty good year in limited number of innings. But people are already comparing his, not to overhype it, but his delivery style to that of Clayton Kershaw. And he's been able to really have a nice strikeout rate in spite of just kind of mediocre fastball. So, I mean, yeah, I think he's definitely someone to watch. And since he drafted him out of college, he could be ready to contribute fairly soon. But I think next year might be pushing it. We might see him in September, which, again, could be a shot in the arm. But, yeah, I would say those are two names to watch. But like I said, not necessarily seeing them contribute much in 2020, but we'll see.
What about Trey Supak?
I know he started in the minors in this past year. I'm not super high on him. However, I would also have said the same thing about Adrian Hauser. Going into this year, not super high on him. Don't know what to expect from him. It could be some contributions in the bullpen or starter. I think that he could be a surprising type guy like Adrian Hauser, but I still think he's more suited for the bullpen, even though he was starting last year in the minor leagues. But definitely, since he's a Brewer, I'm definitely hopeful. But yeah, that's definitely a name to watch out for.
Hey guys, as a quick aside, I'm not. I know he's not a Brewers prospect anymore, but I'm going to get together with Troy Supak in the next like 2 weeks from now.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
Or I'm sorry, Troy Stokes. Sorry,
Troy Stokes.
not Troy Supak. Yeah, Troy Stokes. Sorry about that. Yep.
Oh, that's even better.
He lived out here in the DC area. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely should be exciting.
Yeah.
I guess the only names that I was thinking of that came to mind was like I think that Corey Ray potentially he still has a lot of talent. I mean, obviously last year is another forgettable year. You could say the same thing about Lucas Erceg. If we decide to move on from Travis Shaw and we can't sign Mike Moustakas or anybody else for that matter, he could see a little bit of playing time. And then Devin Williams, he got a cup of coffee just a couple months ago, right? So, or last month, I guess. So, but yeah, the cupboard's a little bit bare for a while, but what can you do? Oh, well.
I mean, Corey Ray had a pretty horrific year in the minor leagues, but you could say the same thing a couple of years ago at Trent Grisham. So, yeah, Corey Ray could definitely, and he's got the pedigree, and that he could break out if he makes the right adjustments or whatnot. Or if somehow the last season was definitely some type of avarice and due to injury and whatnot. But, yeah, he's definitely something that can contribute. And if nothing else, he can up his stock in the minor leagues and make himself valuable as a trade asset, definitely.
Well, guys, I want to thank everyone, and also I wanted to say that Tom Carter did a great job also helping come up with some categories and nominations with us. Really, really thank you. We only have 20 seconds left, though, so Twitter at
Scott,
Tom
Carter is our anonymous source. You can't say his name on the air. It's
oh,
T. Carter,
sorry, Tom C. or T. Carter. Yeah, and Brooks Review 1, definitely check it out there. Stay classy, everybody, and
Go Brewers.
Go Brewers. Dun, 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 dun.